Emily? Is that the wedding planner in the groom's room? The words landed like a slap. Patricia Ashworth's voice carried down the hallway with the precision of someone who had spent decades perfecting the art of public humiliation. Lumi's hand was still on the door handle behind her. The brass was warm from the room, warm from the body heat of a man who had spent the last hour crying into his own fist while she sat on the floor 3 feet away, saying nothing at all. She was wearing the hotel robe over her pajamas. Her hair was loose. In her right hand, she held a navy silk tie, creased in ways that had nothing to do with folding. The elevator doors had opened at the wrong moment. Emily stood there in a champagne-colored robe, her hair still in pin curls, her face bare. Behind her, a hotel manager with a crate of candles. Behind him, the morning light pouring through the windows at the end of the hall, turning everything gold and exposing everything. Patricia emerged from the stairwell in her Chanel jacket. Her eyes went to Lumi. Then to the tie. Then to the closed door behind Lumi. Her mouth tightened into a line that promised consequences. Lumi didn't move. She didn't let go of the door handle. She just stood there, her pulse steady, her face calm. She had been in worse positions than this. Not many, but enough. Who is this person? Patricia's voice was cold now. Emily, who is this woman? Emily stepped out of the elevator. Her bare feet made no sound on the carpet. She walked toward Lumi with the careful, measured steps of someone trying not to break something that was already cracked. "Mom," Emily said, "please go back downstairs." "Excuse me?" "Please. Just give us a moment." Patricia didn't move. Her eyes were still locked on Lumi. "I will not allow some," she stopped, choosing her next words with surgical care. "Some event coordinator to compromise this wedding." Lumi's hand finally left the door handle. She stepped forward, not toward Patricia but toward the wall sconce beside her. She hung the tie there. The gesture was calm, deliberate. It pulled Patricia's attention away from the door and onto the object itself. "He was writing his vows," Lumi said. "He went through 7 drafts. The 8th one, he wrote, 'I hope I'm worthy of you.' Then he started crying." Patricia blinked. "Crying? That's what men do when they think they're going to fail the person they love." Lumi's voice was low, unhurried. "I sat on the floor so he wouldn't have to be alone. That's all that happened." The hallway was very quiet. Somewhere behind them, the manager had retreated back into the elevator. Patricia's face cycled through a series of micro-expressions, calculations, assessments, the weighing of scandal against the effort required to pursue it. She was deciding whether Lumi was worth the trouble. Emily moved first. She walked past her mother and stopped in front of Lumi. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but she wasn't crying. Not yet. She reached out and touched the tie. "He was biting it again?" Emily's voice was barely a whisper. Lumi nodded. "I told him he didn't have to hide the sound. But I think he needed something to hold on to." Emily traced the creases where Julian's teeth had pressed into the silk. "He used to do this when we first started dating," she said. "Whenever his father called, he'd chew through his ties. I thought he'd outgrown it. He didn't outgrow it. He just got better at hiding it." Behind them, the door opened. Julian stood in the threshold, still in his rumpled dress shirt, collar unbuttoned, eyes red and swollen. Barefoot. He looked like a man who had been wrung out and left to dry on the sidewalk. His gaze moved from Emily to Lumi to the tie hanging on the sconce. Then back to his fiancée. "I wanted you to see the man at the altar," he said. His voice was rough, scraped clean. But Lumi saw the one I'm terrified of letting you see. Emily stared at him. Then, slowly, she lifted the tie from the sconce and held it in both hands. She looked at it for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady. How do we fix this before the ceremony? Lumi stepped forward, positioning herself between them. Not to block, to bridge. She looked at Emily. You don't fix him, she said. You just let him know the door isn't locked. Emily's eyes met hers. Something shifted in them, a quiet understanding, a letting go of something she had been holding too tightly. I know you're not a wedding planner, Emily said. Her voice was low, private, meant only for Lumi. I've known since the first day. You're someone he's going to remember. And I'm okay with that, as long as you stay until he's safe. After that, I don't care where you go. Lumi felt something twist in her chest. She didn't show it. She never showed it. But she felt it. I'll stay, she said. Until it's over. Part 2, the room 9 hours earlier, Lumi had been asleep. Not a deep sleep, she never slept deeply in someone else's space, but a manageable one. The room at the Ashford estate was small but elegant, tucked away on the 3rd floor where staff stayed during events. The sheets were high thread count. The window overlooked the gardens where Emily's wedding would happen in approximately 15 hours. The text came through at 4:05 in the morning. He's locked himself in. You're the only one who knows how to make him not scared. Lumi sat up. The room was dark. The gardens outside were silver in the starlight. She read the text 3 times. What happened? A pause. Then Emily's reply, he tried to practice his vows and he couldn't. He threw his pen at the wall. I tried to go in and he told me he needed to be alone. That was 2 hours ago. He's not answering his phone. Lumi, I'm begging you. Lumi had known Julian for 3 days. She had known him in the context of seating charts and wedding cake decisions and the way his shoulders went rigid whenever Patricia was in the room. She had watched him disappear into himself like a flower pulling back from frost. She had noticed things, the way his voice trailed off during toasts, the way he laughed too quickly at jokes, the way his eyes went distant in moments of quiet. She had also noticed the way he looked at Emily. Like she was the only thing in the room that made sense. Like she was the reason he kept breathing. But 2 hours alone in a locked room was a long time for a man who was already drowning. Lumi pulled on her robe and padded down the hallway. Emily had given her the master key that afternoon, just in case. For emergencies, Emily had said. Lumi hadn't asked what kind of emergencies Emily was anticipating. She had just taken the card. The groom's suite was on the 2nd floor. The hallway was empty. The wall sconces cast warm pools of light on the carpet. Lumi inserted the key card and pushed the door open. The room was dark. Not completely, streetlights outside cast orange rectangles on the ceiling, but dark enough that it took a moment for her eyes to adjust. Julian was sitting on the windowsill with his long legs drawn up to his chest, his bare feet on the wood. He was still wearing his dress shirt from dinner, the collar open, the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His tie was loosened around his neck. In his hands, he held a crumpled piece of paper. He didn't turn when she entered. You're Emily's backup plan. Something like that. Lumi closed the door behind her. I don't want to talk about it. Good. She crossed to the window and pushed it closed. The draft had been making the curtains dance. I don't want to talk either. He finally looked at her. His eyes were red. His jaw tight. Then why did you come? She didn't answer. Instead, She walked over to the desk, where a dozen crumpled papers lay scattered like fallen leaves, and picked one up. She smoothed it open. I don't deserve her. She folded the paper carefully and put it in her pocket. Then she turned to face him. You're not afraid of failing her, she said. You're afraid of her seeing you fail. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, delivered with the kind of certainty that came from having lived through this conversation before. Julian's mouth opened. Closed. He looked away. You don't know what you're talking about. Maybe. She walked closer, stopping at the foot of the window seat. But I know you've been biting your tie again. That's why it's wrinkled. And I know Emily sat outside the store for 2 hours before she called me. Julian went very still. How do you know that? I asked the night manager. She told me Emily was in the hallway until 2:30, sitting against the wall. Lumi paused. She didn't knock. She didn't try to come in. She just stayed. So you knew she was there. Julian closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. She's too good for me. You're not wrong. But that's not the point. Lumi sat down on the floor, her back against the wall, her knees drawn up. It was an invitation, not a demand. The point is she stayed anyway. And she's still here. He looked at her. Something cracked in his face. I wrote I don't deserve her because I keep thinking that if she really knew me, all of me, she would leave. And then I think about her leaving and I can't breathe. So I try to write something beautiful, something that will make her stay. And none of it is true. Then write what's true. What? She tilted her head. Not the poetry. Not the version you think she wants. Just one thing that's true. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, very slowly, he said, she makes me feel like I'm not pretending. Lumi nodded. Write that. I can't. It's not a vow. It's the most honest thing you've said all night. Write it down. Then show it to her. He reached for the tie around his neck, pulled it off, and bit down on the fabric. His jaw clenched. His body shuddered. The sound was muffled by the silk. Lumi stayed on the floor, 3 feet away, not touching him, not speaking, just present. After a few moments, he pulled the tie from his mouth. It hung limply from his fingers, ruined. It's destroyed. She won't care. How do you know? Lumi got to her feet. Because when she saw you at your worst, she didn't leave. She called someone who knew how to sit on the floor. That's love, Julian. That's the kind of love you're about to marry. He looked up at her, and for the first time, there was something that might have been relief in his eyes. You're terrifying, he said. She smiled. That's the nicest thing anyone's said to me all week. Part 3, the dining room 7:30. Lumi was standing by the coffee station in the main dining room, sipping Earl Grey and pretending to admire the crystal chandeliers, when Patricia found her. I don't know who you are, Patricia said, but I saw you leave my future son-in-law's room at dawn. This is not the time for your little games. Lumi turned. Patricia had positioned herself directly in her path, flanked by 2 bridesmaids in matching silk robes. The breakfast crowd was beginning to stir. Silverware clinked against china. Conversations were starting to rise. I'm not playing games, Mrs. Ashworth. Lumi set down her cup. You were in his room. At 6 in the morning. In your bathrobe. Patricia's voice carried. I want an explanation. Now. Julian appeared at the doorway, flanked by his best man. His face was pale, his jaw set. He hadn't slept, the dark circles under his eyes looked almost painted on. He glanced at Lumi and then away. "Julian," Patricia said, shifting her attack. "Perhaps you'd like to explain why my daughter's wedding planner was in your room at dawn?" "Mom," Emily was trying to push through the crowd, but two bridesmaids caught her arms. "Mrs. Ashworth." Lumi stepped forward, positioning herself between Julian and Patricia. Her voice was calm, unhurried. "I'm not a wedding planner. I'm the person Emily calls when her best friend is having a panic attack at 4 in the morning." The dining room went quiet. Lumi could feel eyes on her from every direction. She didn't look at them. She looked only at Patricia. He wasn't being unfaithful. He was being honest, for the first time in a year, about how terrified he is of ruining your daughter's life. Emily saw him at his worst last night. And she's still here. Isn't that what you want for her? A man who's willing to be seen, even when it's ugly? Patricia's mouth opened. Closed. For a moment, she looked almost human. Then the mask slid back into place. "We'll discuss this after breakfast." She walked away. The silence held for a few more seconds. Then the conversations resumed, louder than before, buzzing with the electric energy of fresh gossip. Emily pushed through the crowd and grabbed Lumi's arm. "He showed me the vows," she whispered. "The 7th draft. I hope I'm worthy of you. He said you were the one who told him to write what was true." Her eyes were shining. "How did you know?" "Because I know what it looks like when someone's trying to hold himself together. And I know what it looks like when he gives up." Emily blinked. "Thank you." "I don't know how to thank you." "I really don't." Lumi squeezed her hand. "You don't have to. Just go take care of him. He needs you to be okay. He's been trying to be okay for you all morning, and he's exhausted." Emily looked at her, and something in her expression shifted, a flicker of understanding, a recognition of something Lumi hadn't meant to reveal. "You're really good at this," Emily said. "At reading people." "I've had a lot of practice." Part 4, the dance. The rehearsal was at 2 o'clock. The wedding at 6. Lumi moved through the hours with practiced efficiency, solving problems before they became crises. She never raised her voice. She never lost her temper. She just kept everything running. But the first dance rehearsal was a disaster. Emily and Julian stood in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by the wedding party and a handful of early arriving guests. The string quartet was playing a slow waltz. Emily was radiant in her ivory rehearsal dress. Julian was a statue. His shoulders were rigid. His hands trembled against Emily's back. Emily stepped on his foot. Then again. Then a third time. "Sorry," she whispered, her cheeks flushing. "I keep losing my rhythm." "It's okay," Julian said, but his voice was hollow. His eyes were locked on the floor. Patricia stood at the front of the audience, her arms crossed. "Julian," she called out. "You're going to have to do better than this at the actual wedding." Julian flinched. Emily's face went white. Lumi was standing near the champagne tower, watching. She had been watching all afternoon, and she knew what was happening. Julian was retreating. The same thing he had done in the middle of the night. If someone didn't intervene, he would be gone entirely by the time the actual ceremony started. She stepped forward. "May I borrow your groom for 30 seconds? The room went quiet. Emily looked at her, confused. Julian looked at her, and his expression flickered, fear and hope mixed together. I promise I'll give him back, Lumi added. I just need to show him something. Emily hesitated. Then she nodded. Okay. Lumi walked onto the dance floor and took Julian's hand. His palm was slick with sweat. She didn't let go. She turned him so his back was to the crowd and his eyes were on her shoulder. Don't look at them, she said, her voice low. Look at my shoulder. Imagine I'm a contract you're about to sign. Just 3 steps. Left, right, left. That's all. He stared at her. What? Left, right, left. Follow me. She stepped backward, guiding him. His body was stiff, but his feet followed. That's it. Keep breathing. You're doing fine. He looked at her shoulder. Then at her face. Something in him loosened. You're not real, he whispered. I'm very real. No, I mean, he laughed, a breathless, surprised sound. You're not like anyone I've ever met. That's because I'm not staying. She stepped back, letting go of his hand. Now go back to Emily. She needs you to be brave. He looked at her for a moment. Then he turned and walked back to Emily. He took her hand, and this time, his palm was dry. They danced. Not perfectly, there were still missteps, still moments of hesitation, but something had changed in the way he held her. Something open. Something true. Lumi walked back to the champagne tower and picked up a glass. She didn't drink. She just watched. Later, she found Emily in the hallway. Emily caught her arm, her eyes searching Lumi's face. You made him laugh, Emily said. He hasn't laughed in months. Not really. I just reminded him how to breathe. Emily shook her head. No. You did something else. Something I couldn't do. She paused. I sat outside that door for 2 hours last night and I couldn't get through. You opened it in 30 seconds. How do you do that? Lumi was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I didn't open it. He opened it. I just sat there until he was ready. Emily looked at her, and there was something new in her expression, something that might have been understanding, or acceptance, or the beginning of letting go of a fear she had been carrying. Thank you, she said. For being someone he could show that side to. Lumi felt her throat tighten. She didn't let it show. You would have done the same, she said. Emily smiled. I know. But you were here. And that counts. Part 5, the bar. The cocktail hour was winding down. Lumi walked into the bar on the side of the ballroom, ordered soda water, and stood at the counter, not quite alone. A moment later, Julian appeared beside her. You know, he said, I've been to 4 therapists in 2 years. None of them told me to imagine them as a contract. Lumi smiled. That's because I'm cheaper, and I don't charge by the hour. He laughed, a real laugh, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes. How did you know it would work? She turned to look at him. Because fear and negotiation look the same in men. You're not afraid of her. You're afraid of failing in front of everyone. I just gave you a different audience for 30 seconds. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, and what about you? Are you afraid of anything? Lumi's fingers tightened on her glass. Just slightly. Just enough for someone paying attention to notice. Being needed too much, she said. Because when you're needed, it's hard to tell if someone wants you or just the way you make them feel safe. He was watching her. There was something in his gaze, not pity, not judgment, just attention. Pure, sustained attention. It made her want to look away. I don't know what you are to me, Lumi, he said. But I don't want you to leave before the ceremony. She felt his fingers brush against hers on the bar. Light, barely there, the kind of touch that could be accidental. She didn't move her hand. She didn't pull away. She stayed, just for a moment. I'm not leaving, she said. I made a promise. But there was something in her voice, a hesitation, a flicker of uncertainty, and she saw him notice it. His eyes dropped to her hand, still close to his, and stayed there for a moment. Good, he said quietly. Because I think I needed to say something to you first. What? He looked at her. When you told me to write what was true, you said it like you've done it before. Like you've had to say something hard to someone. She didn't answer. She just looked at him, her face calm, her hands still on the bar. He didn't push. But the silence between them was different now. Heavier. Filled with things unsaid. Part 6, The Gate 5:30. Lumi was in the garden, helping the florist adjust the last white roses, when Patricia appeared. 2 bridesmaids flanked her. Her heels clicked against the cobblestones. I've had enough, Patricia said. You've been hovering around my daughter's fiancé all day. I don't know what your game is, but you're leaving. Now. Lumi straightened. Mrs. Ashworth, I'm not a threat. I'm here because Emily asked me to be here. Emily is naive. I'm not. Patricia stepped closer. I saw the way he looked at you after that little dance. That wasn't gratitude. That was something else. She paused. I have a dozen influential guests in there. One word from me, and you'll never work in this town again. You have 5 minutes to pack and disappear. The bridesmaids closed in. Lumi felt her bag being pressed into her hands. She didn't resist. She let them guide her toward the side gate, her heels scraping against the gravel, her pulse steady but her chest tight. At the gate, she stopped. Through the ballroom window, she could see Julian being helped into his jacket. Emily stood beside him, adjusting his lapels. They looked like a painting, golden and perfect. Lumi pulled out her phone. There was a message from Julian. Where are you? I need to see you before the ceremony. Just once. She stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She didn't respond. She turned off her phone and walked toward the main gate. She had made it halfway down the gravel drive when she heard Emily's voice behind her. Lumi! Stop! She turned. Emily was running toward her, her wedding dress only half buttoned, the white fabric trailing behind her in the dirt. Her face was flushed, her eyes wild. I heard my mother threatened you, Emily said. Is it true? Did she make you leave? She's protecting you. She's wrong about me, but she's not wrong to be scared. Emily grabbed her wrist. I don't care about my mother. I care about you. You came into my life this morning and you fixed something I've been trying to fix for 2 years. I can't do this without you tonight. I need you there. In the front row. Not for him, for me. Tears were spilling down Emily's cheeks. Lumi looked at her and felt something crack in her chest. Not because she was in love with Julian. But because she had been Emily once, young, desperate, clinging to someone who knew how to make the fear quiet. You don't need me, Lumi said gently. You never did. You just needed to see that you're stronger than your fear of him breaking. Emily shook her head. Then stay. Please. Lumi looked past Emily's shoulder, toward the ballroom. Julian was standing at the window, his hand pressed flat against the glass. Their eyes met. She felt something pull in her chest, a connection she hadn't asked for and didn't want. She looked at Emily. I'll stay, she said. Not because he needs me. Because you asked. But after the ceremony, I'm leaving. And I'm not coming back. For one breath, she almost added, for him. But she didn't. Emily's face crumpled. Why? Lumi smiled. Because I'm not the kind of woman who stays. I'm the kind who shows up when things are messy and disappears when they get clean. That's my role. And I'm really good at it. She linked her arm through Emily's. Now let's get you married. Part 7, The ceremony. The ceremony was beautiful. Lumi stood in the back, near the exit, and watched Emily walk down the aisle. She watched Julian's face transform when he saw his bride. She watched them exchange vows that were simple and true. You make me feel like I'm not pretending. When Julian said it, his voice cracked. And when he looked up, his eyes found Lumi's in the crowd. Just for a second. Just long enough for her to feel it, the recognition of something he had learned from her. She didn't look away. She didn't nod. She just let him see her, one final time, and then she dropped her gaze to the floor. After the ceremony, there was champagne. There were toasts. There was dancing. Lumi stayed in the shadows, accepting congratulations from people who thought she was part of the staff. And then, just before the first dance, Julian froze. Lumi saw it happen. He was standing at the edge of the dance floor, his face pale, his hands trembling. The guests were watching. Emily was waiting in the center of the floor, beautiful and alone. Patricia was whispering in his ear. His feet wouldn't move. Lumi stepped out of the shadows and walked to Emily. He's not going to move, she said, her voice so quiet only Emily could hear. So you have to go to him. Walk to him. Take his hand. Say one thing, I see you. Emily stared at her. Then she took a breath. And she walked. Lumi watched Emily cross the floor, her white dress flowing behind her. She watched her take Julian's hand. She watched her lean in and whisper. I see you. Julian's body shuddered. And then he was crying, ugly, broken, human crying, and he wasn't trying to hide it. He pressed his forehead to Emily's, his hands shaking around hers. I'm scared, he whispered. I know, Emily said. I'll be scared with you. They started to dance. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. Lumi walked out the side door and didn't look back. Part 8, The driveway. The car was waiting. Lumi had left her small bag in the coat room, and now she was walking down the gravel drive, the autumn wind pulling at her hair. She could hear the music from the ballroom fading behind her. She heard footsteps. Lumi. She stopped. Julian came to stand beside her, his tie loosened, his jacket gone. His face was still streaked with the remnants of tears. You're leaving, he said. My work here is done. I don't know how to thank you. She turned to look at him. You don't have to. You already did. He looked at her, and there was something in his eyes, something raw and unguarded. What if I don't want you to go? Lumi held his gaze for a long moment. Then she smiled, and there was no armor in it. You don't want me, she said. You want the version of yourself that you are when I'm around. But that version isn't mine to keep. It's hers. She pointed toward the ballroom. Emily was standing at the window, watching them. Her expression was complicated, sad, grateful, trusting. She didn't come outside. She just watched. Lumi stepped closer to Julian. She reached up and straightened his tie. Her fingers lingered for a moment too long. You're going to be a good husband, she said. Not because you're perfect. Because you're willing to let her see you fall apart. That's the bravest thing a man can do. His eyes filled with tears. Lumi, don't. She stepped back. You'll make me break my own rule. What rule? She turned toward the car. I don't stay. And I don't look back. She opened the door and got in. The engines started. As they pulled away, she looked in the rearview mirror. Julian was standing where she had left him. Emily had come outside and was wrapping his jacket around his shoulders. He turned to her, and Lumi watched their foreheads touch. She smiled. Then she pulled out the tie, the ruined, creased navy tie, from her bag. She looked at it. She knew now why she had taken it. She would keep it. Not because she wanted to remember him, but because if she kept it, no one else could use it against him. She tucked it back into her bag. And the car drove on into the night. Some meetings aren't for forever. They're just for reminding someone that they're worth being seen. I'm not the one he'll wake up to tomorrow. But I'm the reason he'll be glad he did.
Subscribe to me for more content.